Hello and welcome to the first Tabletop Simulator Warhammer 40k tournament. This is Pigsy. I just want to go quickly through this primer with you guys, and then at the end of the video I'm going to take you guys through some basics of Tabletop Simulator for Warhammer 40k and show you how the maps operate. I'll put timestamps in the description for that, so if you forget something you can quickly go there, or if it's something that you already know, then you won't have to watch the entire video. So first, let's just look at this primer document. So there's a link to our Discord here where you're expected to be. This is where you can post things like your results and your lists. You'll also be able to find other players to hang out with and play, maybe practice beforehand. We have a Reddit link here, which isn't used as much, but it's still a place to get in contact with people. We've got a list of tournament organizers with their Discord details, so these are their usernames. Feel free to add them, and they'll be very active on the Discord and should have the tournament organizer tag. So let's just go through this. If you're joining us, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for being part of our growing community. We hope that this tournament will show that not only is Warhammer 40k a viable game on Tabletop Simulator scene, but it's also totally playable online, which I absolutely think it is. I play it all the time. Below are a list of specifications and rules to follow. Please review these very carefully if you do not want to risk being disqualified. Judging will be a hands-off approach, meaning that players are allowed to solve any discrepancies by themselves. If further help is needed, the game will be paused until a judge can resolve the discrepancy. So basically try not to be too much of a dick. We will be using rules as interpreted. I know this is a bit of a controversial subject. We want to stay close to rules as written, if that makes sense, but in my view and the view of the other organizers, the rules as written actually kind of breaks the game in a lot of ways. For instance, there's no such thing as assault weapons. You could have tanks standing on their end. It gets pretty dicey. Of course, we want to keep this competitive, and knowing more rules than your opponent should always help you. So we're still going to try and have as many tactics and things as we can, but if there is a discrepancy in rules, it's hard to argue, I suppose, if it's rules as interpreted. So we are just going to be using judges, which will be omnipotent, so even when they're wrong, they are right, so please don't argue with the judges. Army composition rules. We're doing 1750 points. We're going over this limit. We chose these point value because that is what Games Workshop have moved to for their official tournaments. Match play rules. Got that detailed in the books. We're going to have Forge World allowed. I know it's difficult to find some models on Tabletop Simulator, especially Forge World, like Redempted Dreadnoughts. I don't think I've seen models of those around, so proxies will be allowed within reason. You can also label your units to make them less confusing. Also make sure your opponent understands your list before you begin playing. The list must be pre-submitted and approved by a judge using the Mini HQ website. There's a link for it here. Up to 3 detachments are allowed. Usual detachment rules with normal allies, all that. Yep, we've got our proxies. We will be using the rule of 3, so that's a maximum of 3 units of the same data set allowed per army, excluding troops and transports. You may, for instance, still bring 3 separate units of Lehman Russ battle tanks, each unit containing 3 models for a total of 9 models. So that is the way that we believe that the rule of 3 should be interpreted. We are having one exception to this, which is for Demon Princes. People just don't like to see those 9 Demon Prince armies, so you couldn't bring, 3 Slash and 3 Corn or whatever Demon Princes. You can bring 3 of one or a mix, but only a total of 3 Demon Princes. That's the only exception. So the overall tournament structure. This is a knockout single elimination bracket tournament. In each round, the losing player will be knocked out and will winning player will continue. This continues until 2 players are remaining, and the winner of the finals, of course, wins. The 2 losers of the round of 4 or the semi-finals will then play off the 3rd place. So that's the only, I suppose, non-knockout area is the round of 4. I know most tournaments are using a more sort of round-robin style, an ITC sort of format. We thought it would be easier for us to manage, seeing as this is our first tournament. We just want to make it very simple, and because we have the luxury of playing online, we don't have to run the entire tournament within a day like you would at a physical event, where maybe you have 2 days if it's a particularly large event, but here we can play it over many days if we need to. So this tournament will use the most up-to-date codexes and supplements chapter approved and FAQs published by Games Workshop, of course. If a player misses their arranged time, they are knocked out, but players, if they both agree to a different time that is not pre-arranged for them, I'm fine with that, they can do that. But if one player says they don't want to organize a different time and the other player cannot make the official time, then too bad for the player that can't make the official time. After the conclusion of a match, both players must contact the same TO or tournament organizer or a judge and tell them who won, who lost, how many points each scored, and account for scored points. But scored points shouldn't matter in the long run, but it could be useful if there's some weird stuff with a draw or something like that. So take note that we want both players to contact a tournament organizer or a judge. Please try and contact the same individual. So even if you lost, you still need to contact a TO to tell them the result. So for mission types, this is not an ITC tournament. We're thinking of doing that in the future, but we want to keep it simple for our players who may not have played ITC before. So the mission types, we will be using the chapter approved Eternal War missions. So these are not the card ones. So these are the missions that appear in chapter approved. Except we will exclude roving patrol because that's not a very competitive mission. Many of your models don't start on the table. So after a map has been selected, but before armies are revealed, roll a d6, and this will determine which mission you're doing. Should be on page 67 of a chapter approved book. If a 6 is rolled, re-roll it until it is not rolled. This will avoid you playing roving patrol. Each game has a time limit of 3 hours from the start of deployment. If this time limit is reached, both players may agree to continue playing. Either player can opt not to continue. So we do want to have a time limit in there just in case, somebody is trying to run out of a clock or do something dodgy like that. We don't expect the time limit to have to be used because 3 hours is of course quite a long time, but it's there just in case as a safety net and to give judges some nice guidelines if they need to solve a conflict with somebody perhaps running out the clock. So you of course lose if you are tabled. So a player is tabled when every model has been destroyed with the exception of flyers and I believe spore mines, and any unit that is in reserve or not on the table. So normal table rules, stuff in Deep Strike won't save you, flyers won't save you. If you kill all the enemy models, you win. And of course a player may concede before the end of the game. For scoring victory points, just whatever victory points you have immediately when that player concedes. So let's go over a couple of the terrain rules. Terrain guidelines. Ruins. For this event, the bottom level walls of all ruins are considered blocking line of sight, even if they do not actually do so. This means existing openings in them, such as those created by windows, doors, bullet holes, etc., block line of sight. This rule does not mean the players can create walls where none exist. If in doubt as to where to define these barriers, clarify with your opponent before the game begins. this shouldn't come into play, this rule, too much. It's the ITC terrain rule. I believe we have constructed the maps in such a way that there are no windows, bullet holes, or doors, anything like that in ruins. They should not exist, but in the case that we have missed something, we will be using this line of sight blocking rule. And please make sure that you go over with your opponent any terrain features that you are unsure about. Models with the infantry keyword may move through terrain walls as though they're not there. Sorry, this should be ruin walls as though they're not there. Again, please make sure that you agree on what is a ruin and what is not a ruin before you begin deploying with your opponent to avoid any arguments. Moving up or down a floor of ruins or other terrain features costs 3 inches of movement, as usual. All units may move over the top of sandbags, so some maps have strings of sandbags on them, and it is intended that anything so can move over the top of them, not just infantry. I think some of the maps would be rather imbalanced if, say, tanks couldn't move across those sandbags. So keep in mind they will provide cover if you're within 1 inch they are a barricade, but all units should be able to move across them. And again, as I've already stressed, players are expected to agree on terrain before the start of the game. Map pool. A pool of 6 maps will be used. We've got a download link below to a Steam workshop, so everyone must download this before the start of a game. Before armies are revealed, the map is decided by rolling a d6 and matching the result to the table below. So we have the maps here. So you roll a 4, okay, you're playing Desolate Market. You roll a 2, you're playing Refinery. If both players agree, the dice may be re-rolled to choose a different map. So this, you can only do this if you haven't seen your opponent's armies. If for some reason you don't like one of the maps, you think it's a poorly designed map, which is possible, no hurt feelings, you can take a look at that map, decide it's crappy, and re-roll until you're happy with the result. But both you and your opponent must agree to this. Of course, any one player can veto this. Okay, so I just wanted to cover a couple of basic things. First, with Tabletop Simulator, so just how to grab your army, place it on the table, and then I'm going to show a couple of slightly more advanced things in how the tournament maps work. So once you've downloaded the map pack and the mod pack from the Discord, you want to create a new game. Single player, you could do this in multiplayer also. Go to Workshop, type in the faction that you want, so let's say Space Marines. We've got many different chapters here. Let's pick Ultramarines. Load them up. Now I like to create a new table for myself. Sorry, not a table, a board. So Objects, Components, Boards, and then click and drag custom board out. Don't need to put an image on it. And then we can go grab our army. So let's say we need some tactical marines. So here's a couple of tactical marines of bolters, cool. So I Control C to copy them, Control V to paste. So let's say we've got a couple of tactical marines of bolters, we want a guy with a plasma. We're probably going to need a sergeant for him. It can be difficult to find good models for everything, so you could take, here we go, we've got a sergeant with power sword. Excellent. Cool. So maybe now we want a devastator squad, so I'm going to give another sergeant. Take a couple of las cannons, a couple of heavy bolters. Copy paste these guys. Cool. There's our devastator squad. Sometimes you might have to go through multiple files to find guys you want. For instance, if you've noticed, there are limited HQ options on the board here. There's lots of tanks, but for instance we don't have Gilliman or something like that. So I'm going to click and drag these guys, Control C, the whole army. Then go to games, workshop, go look for Ultramarines. So this is another file that has more specific units. So again, just going to grab a table. Then I Control V to paste the guys I got from the other map down here. Then who do we need from this army? We've got a Gilliman model here we can grab. So there's our Gilliman. Sweet. Maybe we want one of these. Alright, so now we've finished getting our army together. So we're going to select all of it, make sure everyone's highlighted. And then select, right click on one model, save object. And then you can choose a folder to put this in. I'm just going to put it in my root folder. And then we could save the army. So now I'm going to just delete these guys. And then in objects, save objects. There he is. So if you click him, he's going to appear in the middle of a table, which is kind of annoying. So you can click and drag onto the board. So you should have your list saved in a folder, and then you can click and drag to get them out. I know some people prefer to put them in a bag, so you can go components, I believe it's in tools, get a bag, and then you can pick up your army and put them in a bag. And then you can save this bag. So now you can drag the models out one at a time, or you can search for bag and pull models out this way. I think it's definitely better to save the army in a folder, but the bag option is there also. So now I want to jump into one of the maps and show you how the tables work. So if we go into Desolate Market Tournament Edition, here's our map. So once we're in, save objects, pull out our army. So here they are, perfect. So these maps, some of them are fairly symmetrical like this one, some of them aren't, that's fine. So for cover we've got ruins, craters, sandbags, ruins again. Up here, here's some utility things we can use. So we've got command points and victory points. You can use these to go up and down, count your player turns, battle rounds, all that. Got rulers, why not? You probably won't use them because you can, of course, hold tab to measure. You can, of course, pick up a unit, hold tab, and measure its movement there. Up here we've got various tokens you can use. For instance, orders for your guard, buffs, all that. You can right click, put a description in, so like move. So now we know that's for move. Here we've got bags for deployment zones. So after you roll to determine your deployment zone, for instance, let's say we rolled a 2, we've got Dawn of War. Click place, and it's going to place the deployment zone on the map for you. If these walls are a bit too high for you, and maybe they're blocking a line of sight, you need to check something. If you press F9, or you can click it over here, the gizmo tool, select move, you can click on these walls, and it will bring up these arrows here. So use the blue one to go up and down, so we can go up high, but we can lower it all the way down here, so we can still see the line, but it won't block your line of sight anymore. Once you've done, recall, and then at any time you can replace to check for scoring, for instance, line breaker at the end of a game, that sort of thing. I believe it's Vanguard Strike. When you select a deployment zone here, you might want to right click on the walls that will not be used, so you know you're fighting across this way. But you can recall this. Or maybe not. Oh, I'm using the wrong one. Yep, so recall Vanguard Strike. Yeah, if you do delete the walls though, they won't come back. You'll have to reload the map, or you could copy and paste this section in from another map. We've also got 6 objective markers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just pick these up, place them down where they need to be. Once they're placed, right click and hit lock, wherever lock is, toggles lock. Or you can do this with Control L. So once they're placed down, you might later have a dispute over whether something's in the deployment zone, in the objective marker or not. So if they have a state here, go state 2, and it turns it into a nice bubble. So we can take our sergeant here. You know, if someone's they've just ran out of movement, maybe they're coming in here, ooh, they can't quite get it. Is he in state 2? No, he's not, so he'd need to be right touching to get in. The last thing I want to show on the maps is these dice rollers. So you'll start off with your 6 dice here. Oh, I think these ones are locked for some reason. They shouldn't be. So you start off with 6 die. You can copy and paste these dice. And we've got dice rollers. You can use your own if you want, but we have these boxes here, so you want to put the dice inside and they'll roll for you. I mean, you can just delete the misses. So if I'm firing with, you know, a bunch of Space Marines, I need 3s to hit. Put it in 4s to win something, let's say, and then your opponent can pick up these, take their saves. It's going to speed the game up a lot. If you've got a bunch of dice that all have different values like this, let's say I'm shooting a bunch of Imperial Guard and I want to take, let's say, 98 shots. How the hell do I get 98 out of here? So if you right click, rotational value set is 1, and then if you mouse over all of these, down the bottom you'll see it says equals 78, so I've got 78 dice here. I can also put these on the tray and we'll get, there are 18 ones. So then I can take these, how many is this? 7, 9, 10, okay. Maybe I want to save a bunch of 10 for later, and then I can 1, 2, so that's 30, 90, how many did I say, 98? I don't know. So now this should be 98 dice, rotation value 1, yeah, so 98. Got them, easy. In they go. So that should speed up your rolling quite a lot. Okay, so I think that covers the map and how to use them. So I just want to quickly show a couple of basic tips that people might not realize, even if they've been using the tabletop simulator for a while. So let's copy some more tactical marines. So first one is ruins. If you've used Tabletop Simulator, you can know how painful ruins can be to use. Let's say I want to put all these guys up in the second floor here. If I pick them up and I try and put them in, it raises them to the highest height, and I can't really, and then they smash together. It's not ideal. Or maybe I want to put them in the bottom, I can't get them in. So the easiest way I've found to do this, let's say I want to put them in that second floor. So you want to put them in the formation you want. So let's say I want lined up against that window. Okay. Once you've got them in the formation you want, again you want to use the gizmo tool like you did for the deployment zones. Take the gizmo tool, hold Alt to group select. Let's take that out of the way. And again you get these here. So while they're selected by the gizmo tool, the physics won't affect them. So we can raise them up to the height we need. Cool. Use this to drag them forward. And just over here. There they are. Alright, so they're in, and I think if you touch them, yeah, you might want to just raise them to the exact height you want. If you don't want to use the gizmo tool, or you're trying to do something a bit quicker, if you pick up a model, I'm just going to change my left height here to make it more obvious. If you are holding a model and then you right click, it pushes them down to the ground, and you can still drag them around. So this can be useful just to get one model in easily like this, and then release with left click first while still holding right click. But if you then touch that model, he's going to fly up to the top, so it's not ideal. If you're experiencing some wobbly model syndrome, they're falling off somewhere where you need them to be, like right there, it's going to fall off. Again, just use the gizmo tool. So you want to right click, lock the guy, so that way he can't be affected by physics, and then just pick him up and put him over where he needs to be. So it can be right on this edge here. It can be a little fiddly, but it's much better than any other way I've found to do it. So there you go. To unlock him, you need to right click, hit lock. He's staying there for me nicely, but often they won't. So these guys are infantry, so of course they can move through ruins as though they're not there. So something that will happen often will be you want to move an infantry squad through ruins like this. Okay, we've got 6 inches of movement. It's a huge pain in the ass if I try and pick them up. And how do I know where 6 inches is if I'm trying to use the gizmo tool? Because you can't hold tab. So what I like to do is pick up just one model and then try and fit them in. So I'm right clicking, get them under. Oh, even this is a bit fiddly. So there we go, 6 inches. And then F9, Alt, drag to use the gizmo tool. And I know this guy should go in this little gap here, so I can drag these guys through the wall. And there you go. Move through the wall easily. The other thing you can have a play around with is physics options. So if you go menu, configuration, down here you've got these physics sliders. So I've got mine on semi-lock, but let's say we go to full. If I've got, let's say I've got some units here, and I want to pick up, this flyer who's going to fly over the top of these units. If I pick him up, these models are actually good, but some models you'll smash them down, and it can be quite frustrating. I suppose these aren't good models to show. Maybe I'll work with them. No, they're good too because their collide is just their base. Yeah, here we go. So with Gilliman, you see how he's smashed into it. So, these models are quite good, but some models will be quite horrendous. So it's annoying to try and get this Gilliman guy. You could accidentally smash a flyer, knock it out of the way. But if you go into your physics here, set it to semi-lock. So semi-lock physics are slightly toned down. Objects that are set will no longer interact with other objects. So this one counts as set. And now they contact, but it won't knock the flyer out of the way. Another thing that I'm sure can frustrate people is sometimes you pick up a big horde, maybe you've got 40 orc boys or something, and you want to move them, but you move your mouse too quickly and they'll smash together like this. And then you've got to, you can't take them back to the formation that they were in, and you've got to press F to flip them over. It's horrendous. So there's 2 ways to get around this, that I've found at least. First is, don't use your mouse to move them, just pick them up with your mouse, and then if you use WASD keys, they won't get thrown around. But as soon as you move the mouse, they're screwed. Another way to do this is, again, change the physics options to locked. So now I believe, let's take these guys. I can shake them as much as I want, and they won't smash together. I prefer not to have this physics option on, because of the dice. So if I have a bunch of dice, I like to be able to use sort of mush them together. So I guess it's a slight trade-off. So yeah, if I've got my dice, I can mush them together like that. Thanks for watching the video. Thank you for signing up, and good luck on the tabletop. I'll see you there.